Named one of the top 10 wedding photographers in the world. A legend behind the lens. World-renowned author. The one, the only, Kevin Kubota.
I've got clients coming. Can you please go out and sweep the front of the office?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Okay.
All right, thank you. Oh, she did not. Are you kidding me? Did you see what Aubrey just did? I know, I did too. Can you believe that? I know. Oh, hold on just a second. Hi, Tamara, how are you? Yeah, no, I'm totally ready. The cards are done, and you can just come on by maybe like 10 minutes. Okay, perfect. All right, we'll see you then. Oh my gosh, there's a client coming in like 10 minutes and I have so much work to do on her holiday cards, it's ridiculous. Hold on a second.
Pick up in your music.
Okay, yeah, no. Oh no, oh. Are you kidding me? That was not the right person. Ah!
Are those pesky work tasks getting in the way of your prime social media time?
Who are you?
Well, there's a solution. Time management for photographers. You're a creative person. Photographers need time management solutions that are different from the rest of the world. I can help you, and you can get back to what you love doing most, playing on the computer and socializing with your friends. So let's talk kind of seriously now about time management for photographers. And why is time management different for photographers? Because we are creative people, and creative people sort of respond differently to typical time management rules and principles. We get distracted pretty easily. So let's kind of talk about that and see what are some of the top things we can do. And a lot of this comes from my experience growing my own photography business, which I've done for 20 years now, and also growing a photography business, but a software and training company. We do Kubota image tools, and we have a Suka book, and we have Red Boot Design that does designing albums. So I have a lot of businesses that have grown over the years. So my time management requirements have really grown exponentially. And so I think that these techniques, these few things that I'm going to share with you, are sort of the key things that I think are going to help you in your business as well. So one of the first things that I've discovered is there are golden hours in the day. In other words, you may find that when you get up, you are most creative between, say, 8 and 10 o'clock or 10 and 12 o'clock. And then after that, you sort of go down and you find it hard to really focus and concentrate. Well, the big mistake that a lot of people make is they'll attend to their menial tasks, things like checking email, Facebook, social media things, during those prime golden hours when you're the most creative. And that's when you should be focusing on doing the brainstorming, doing the photo shoots, doing the things that really require your absolute creative attention. So find out when your golden hours are and schedule it so that that's when you have your creative time. That's when you're actually producing something. And it could be even coming up with a marketing campaign or anything that requires creative thought, okay? And then you're gonna save the other things that you do for the non-creative hours, okay? So identify your golden hours, do your brainstorming, idea generation, your shooting during those times, and save the other stuff, email, Facebook, Twitter, phone calls that you don't have to think too hard about and being creative. Do that at other times of the day, and you're gonna find that you're gonna get more done, at least the creative stuff, when it really is most effective for your body. The next thing you want to think about is this little concept called write it now. Now, a lot of time management techniques talk about writing things down, and that's really important. But what I want to really advocate, and what I've tried over the years and have found to be very effective, is to write down everything, not just a to-do list, but I'm talking about everything that I, in some shape or form, need to remember. And why is that important? Because our brains naturally get overloaded with information. So for example, it could be something as simple as you're having a conversation with somebody, you meet somebody on the street, and you start talking and say, oh, there's this great movie, it's got great lighting, you're a photographer, you'd love this movie, you gotta see it. So you're like, oh, what's that movie? Okay, they tell you the name of the movie, and you say, okay, I'm gonna remember that, but you don't write it down, right? Well, an hour later you come back and you start looking it up online, saying, try to find this movie, and you can't remember what it is. Has this ever happened to you? I know it has. This happens to all of us. We can't remember something that we just told ourselves we're going to remember maybe half an hour ago. Well, what happens is all that stuff sits in the back of your brain, and your brain is trying to hold on to it, and so it really doesn't have enough room to process other things, to be creative. So what I found very effective is you just write everything down. It could be remember this, talk to this person, call that person, or see this movie. Even if you think you may not ever use it again, write it down, because it's going to be important to get it out of your mind. And that's the main thing. So when means write it now. And you can use your smartphone. I use my iPhone and have a quick little app. I can jot down anything and every time I need to remember anything. If I don't write it in there, it means I'm not planning to remember it and I don't care. Okay. One thing this is going to do for you, it's going to reduce stress, because you're no longer going to be thinking about what was it that I needed to remember, and feeling that sense that there's something nagging the back of your brain. There's all these things that I need to remember and I can't possibly remember them all. Well, if you write it now, get it somewhere, you get it off your brain, off your plate. Okay? Clear your mind for creativity. It's also going to enhance your credibility. Why? Wouldn't it be cool if every time you said you're going to do something for somebody, you actually did it? What if you said, hey, I'm going to call you in a couple weeks, and you actually did call them in a couple weeks? A lot of times we say things, and with all the greatest intentions, we plan to get back to somebody, or to send them a link to something, or to send them a gift in the mail, or send them a thank you card, and we really want to do it, but we just completely forget. It's an honest mistake. But what if you could remember to do everything you said you were going to do? You'd look pretty sharp. The next thing that photographers need to work on is focus. I'm not talking about focusing your camera, I'm talking about focusing on your tasks every day, because focus is probably one of the worst problems we have. It's getting distracted. And here's one of the biggest distractions we have. It's email auto-checking. You sit down at your computer and that little bing, bing, bing goes off all day because your email's checking in the background. Well, you can turn that off. Did you know that? You can actually turn off email auto-checking. I didn't know that. Yes, you can. You can manually check your email, and that's a much better way to do things. If you schedule email checking so that you're checking it at certain times of the day when you're not in your golden hours, of course, then you're not constantly pulled away from what you're doing to take a peek at that email or wonder what's in there waiting for you. That's the huge distraction. To multitask like that is not productive. The other thing that I like to do, and you can do this on any smartphone, is to set up focus alarms. So actually on my phone, I've got an automatic reminder to pop up every day at a certain time that says, are you focused? I also have another alarm that pops up to say, do what you love. And the reason I have these is to just constantly remind myself, if I'm getting distracted at any point, I pull up my little alarm and it says, are you focused? No, I really wasn't focused. Let me get back to what I should be doing. And to remind me to do what I love, because I think that's very important. You're always doing what you love the most. The other thing you want to do is to create a bubble. A bubble is a place to work undistracted by everything else going on in your office and the world around you. Distractions are the #1 killer of productivity. And the email auto-checking we just talked about is probably one of the biggest disruptions to your bubble. But there are other things as well. There's an interesting quote I found. This guy who's a time management expert is also a hypnotist. And he wrote this quote. It says, if you want to create amnesia, you should keep interrupting people and or change the subject. The hypnotic explanation is that memory is dependent on your state of mind. So when you change your focus, you're changing your state of mind, which makes it hard to remember what you were thinking about before. So that makes a lot of sense. Have you ever had that experience where you're talking to a friend and you're in a really great conversation and somebody else walks up to you and goes, oh, hey, did you guys see that show on Saturday night? You guys turn, you talk for a couple of seconds. As soon as they leave, you look back at each other and go, what were we talking about again? Never mind. It'll come back to us. You forget, because a distraction, as soon as your mind is taken away from what you were doing, you forget. And of course, you're going to be much less productive if you're not on that same train of thought and you have to try and figure it out and start all over again. All right, the next thing we're going to do is work on batch process. Now, I'm not talking about batch processing in Photoshop or Lightroom, although that's extremely important and a whole another subject, which we did talk about in our last season of PostPro So you can check that out. But I'm talking about batch processing your work. What you want to do is you want to work in batches. You want to cross-train your brain. Now, working in batches has to happen a certain way. In other words, we need background processing time. Now, they did this test on college students, and they had them either try to work continuously on a project, without stopping, no interruptions, and you'd think that would be very effective, right? Just stay focused and crank through it. Well, the results were not as good as letting them work for batches at a time, maybe a couple of hours, and then switch to something completely different, work on that for a little while, and then switch back and work for another stretch. Now, that's different than the multitasking, the interruptions that we were talking about earlier, where you are every couple of minutes jumping back and forth. That doesn't work. But a long enough batch allows you to work through a problem, figure something out the best you can, and then you need to give it a break and let your subconscious process the rest. And then you come up with more creative ideas. And I've used this technique actually throughout my career as a designer and a photographer. When I'm coming up with creative solutions, even a writer, I need a creative way to solve something. I'll just stop working on it, do something completely different, and then come back and start another batch of work, and then the answers seem to flow a lot more clearly that way. So here's kind of typically what happens in our lives. We work on tasks, so we jump 1, 2, 3, 4, back and forth, right? That's ineffective. That's like the interruption method. The other method that a lot of people talk about is just stay focused. Work in one straight, long, huge time chunk, get something done. Well, that's great in theory, but it's not really practical. Most of us can't work for 4 or 5 hours straight on one thing. We really can't. It's too hard. The best way to work on it is to work in smaller batches, okay? Smaller batches, you're still gonna shift, but not as much as what we typically do now, shifting constantly. So if you can manage those small batches, you're gonna be more effective overall and generally come up with more creative ideas and solutions. The next part is baby steps, and this seems a little bit obvious, but I found there's a little twist to this baby step concept that I've really put into action for myself lately. Now, when we look at our task list, one of the problems with long task lists is that it looks overwhelming, and part of our mind gives up and says, there's no way I can do all this stuff. I'm just gonna go do something else. I'm gonna go check my Facebook, check my email, whatever, because this task list is too daunting. It's too much. So by narrowing it down, first of all, and just picking the top 3 and hiding all the other things at the start of your day is actually a good idea. Don't look at everything you have to do, just look at your top 3 to-do items that you need to do. Okay? And then don't necessarily mentally commit to completing a project. And this is a really simple mind game, but it's very effective. If you say, I'm gonna start this project and I'm gonna finish it, I'm gonna work on it hardcore until I'm done, well, that's a daunting thing to your brain. Instead, if you say, I'm gonna take out the first page of this project and just put it in front of me. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm just gonna take it out and put it right there. Well, that's easy, right? Your brain doesn't say, oh, that's easy, I can do that, no problem. Well, taking that first little baby step and just getting that project in front of you makes it all the more easier to take the next step and actually write something down on that paper. But it's a simple mind game that I've learned I can play this with myself, and it works. It really does work. If I commit to doing an entire project, I get overwhelmed. If I say I'm gonna take the first step, and that's it, I'm not gonna commit to anything else, I find it much easier to move on from there. And do this kind of math yourself. If you write down, I wanna start a new habit. Maybe I wanna start working out. I wanna start regularly writing my blog post. Well, if you say it's gonna take me an hour and I gotta do this 3 times a week, that's overwhelming. I don't wanna do that. Your brain says that, right? So you never get started. But if you just say, I'm gonna do it for 5 minutes, 3 times a week, and that's it. What normally happens is you get started on that 5 minutes and then you get on a roll and you continue to do it. Or you do it 5 minutes, 3 times a week this week, next week you're gonna do 7 minutes. The next week it goes to 10 minutes. And then pretty soon you've got a habit, and that's the key thing. You start the habit with small steps, and then it's really easy to increase the time or the intensity of whatever you're doing once you have the habit in place, and that's kind of the key thing. The next valuable skill we can learn is outsourcing. And outsourcing simply means getting somebody else who's better at something to do it for you. by hiring them or asking them or trading with them. And it's a simple concept, and yet for some reason we don't let go, or we think it's going to be cheaper for us to do everything ourselves. Like we do our own taxes, we do our own printing, we do our own album design, we do all these things ourselves, and we may not really be the best person for the job. And we could be spending much more valuable time on marketing or shooting or coming up with creative ad campaigns or something like that than doing things that we're really not that great at. And in fact, a lot of modern business books advocate this method as a way to really get rich, is to outsource. There's a great book called The 4-Hour Workweek, which talks extensively about outsourcing for every part of your business so that you can spend the least amount of time doing only the things that you are really required for. And this is a concept that's really kind of strange to some solo photographers. If you work by yourself and you're used to doing everything all alone, solo, you don't really think about hiring an assistant. Well, hiring an assistant can also be one of those great things where after you do it, you go, why did I wait so long? Because an assistant can really take the pressure off you, allow you to focus, and it also adds a bit of accountability to you, which is very important. When you work alone, you're not really accountable to anyone. And an assistant, even though they're working for you, helps you to stay on track and to look and act accountable. I created a time tracking log, and I did this for myself as well as for my assistant to see how much time we actually were spending on each part of our work process during the day. So a time tracking log is simply where you will write down everything you do, and you can do this for 2 weeks. I really suggest trying to do it for an extended period of time, and it's a pain in the butt, but it's going to be really, really telling and very effective for you. But what I also found when I did this is I found out how much time went into producing each print. For example, when a client ordered a print, I thought, well, it only cost us $5 to make the print, so I could be charging $10 and I'm good, right? No. $5 to make the print, but it also takes another 30 minutes or so of back office time to pull up the file, to do the retouching, to go into the file cabinet and put the CD away, to contact the customer, to write up the order. There's so many parts of that process that all goes into time that somebody has to be paid to do. So once we tracked all of that, we realized we weren't charging nearly enough for our prints. We were giving them away, and obviously it made sense because we weren't making the money we needed to make. So once we did this time tracking, we changed the prices of our prints to reflect it. It was very easy to raise our prices when we knew there was some solid basis for doing this price increase, and everything got better. And when you get to your workflow, one of the best things, which I'm sure you already know, is to use something like Lightroom or Aperture to do most of your post-processing. Now, we talked a lot about our Lightroom workflow in our previous episodes. You can rewind and go watch those if you want to, but make sure you're using one of these post-processing programs. Don't try to do everything manually one at a time in Photoshop. That is so old school. Nobody needs to do that anymore. Use Lightroom or Aperture or whatever it is that you prefer to use, but use some sort of program designed for image management, and you're gonna cut your workflow time down, usually 80% for most people. Lastly, when you are very good about getting something done, sticking to your batch processes, give yourself a fun reward. And I find that everybody, including myself, likes to have little rewards. And it could be simply going to the coffee shop and getting yourself a latte, but you can't do that until you've attacked this batch. I've worked for 2 hours on this project, and I know when I'm done, I'm getting a reward. So give yourself something to work towards, something to reward yourself, and it doesn't have to be big money budget items. It could just be something simple that you like to do, taking a walk around the block, playing with your cat, playing with your kids for a few minutes, or getting a bowl of ice cream or whatever it is that floats your boat. Set that up so that you can get those after you complete something. And it's another simple mind game, but it really works. In fact, creative people are motivated by fun stuff, right? So give that to yourself as a reward, and you'll be a happier camper. So remember, it's not bribery, it's just positive reinforcement. That's what we tell ourselves when we're dealing with kids anyway. So now that we're done, I can have a little fun time for myself. Yeah, now it's time to play. How you doing, buddy? Yeah. Hey, watch out, monster trucks are coming! Yeah, flip, double backflip, get it! Tune in next week to PhotoPro, and we're going to talk about how you can do basic video editing right inside of Lightroom 4. Yes, I'm not saying that Lightroom is going to replace your fancy pants video editing software, but look at some of the cool things that you can do. It's pretty cool. So see you next week, and we'll talk about video editing in Lightroom 4.
PhotoPro was brought to you by White House Custom Color. Like the music? Special thanks to Triple Scoop Music. Frame Network giveaways are brought to you by B&H. Head to giveaways.framenetwork.com for your chance to win. Find out more about the equipment used in this episode on framenetwork.com.